I've had notification that the meeting is now live. Good evening. This is the Licensing Subcommittee C on Tuesday the 23rd of June at 7 p.m. The first item on the business is to just advise members, officers and participants, applicant and solicitor, of the protocols for remote meetings. And I know that members have heard these before, but it is a standard procedure that we do this for all meetings. So when speaking, if I could ask that you only speak when invited to by the chair. If you wish to speak, please raise your hand like so, and the chair will then note, and I will note that you wish to speak. Can you make sure that your mics are muted during the meeting, but the chair will keep their mic on at all times in order for continuity during the proceedings. When speaking, please speak slowly, please speak succinctly, and when you are highlighting anything within the agenda pack, please refer to the page number, the map, or whatever which is in the actual agenda pack. And if you're having any difficulties technically or otherwise, if you use the chat bar in the right hand corner, and Mario, our IT person, will pick that up. However, it is not for general asking of questions and general chat in the chat bar. If there is any persistent disruption, which I'm sure there won't be, the person concerned would be asked to desist or would be ejected from the meeting. When we come to the application for consideration, unlike in an ordinary meeting, we would adjourn and deliberate, then advise the applicant of the meeting of the decision of the members. In this current situation, we will ask the applicant to leave the proceedings, and they will be advised by licensing service of the decision within the next 24 to 48 hours. And at the end of the meeting, we will ask the applicant and representative to leave the proceedings in order for members to deliberate in private. And that is all for me to say at this stage. Apart from, as the first item on the agenda is the election of chair, could I have a nomination for the chair, please?
Could I nominate Councillor Peters, please?
Thank you very much, Councillor. There are no other members present. Councillor Peters is duly elected.
Wonderful, thank you very much. So the second item on the agenda that you will see on the, I think it's the second page of the first page of the pack of the meeting report, is apologies for absence. I believe there are no apologies for absence, is that right?
We will note that Councillor Bell was unable to attend due to technical difficulties, Chair. Thank you.
Okay. Any declarations of interest? I don't have any. Does Councillor Smith?
None, thank you.
Wonderful. In which case, the next item on the agenda is the minutes of the last meeting, but I don't think there are any other. No, that's a shake of the head. In which case, we can move on to the licensing subcommittee hearing procedure. But before we do so, I think it probably makes sense for us to go around the virtual room so that we can all introduce ourselves. I'll start with the licensing subcommittee members. My name is James Peters. I am a councillor in de Beauvoir. Councillor Smith.
Hi there, Councillor Smith, councillor in Stoke Newington Ward. James, we can't see your picture, by the way. Your camera.
Ah. Okay. You can't see me. My camera's on.
Can members indicate I'm able to see you, Councillor Peters?
And Mario says that he can as well.
Yeah,
so
yeah, you're back on now.
Okay, cool. Wonderful. So then I'll go through the officers present and then move to the applicant and his solicitor, if that's okay with everyone. So Amanda.
Hello, good evening everyone. My name is Amanda North and I'm the legal advisor to the panel this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Clifford.
Good evening, I'm Clifford Hart. I'm Senior Government Services Officer and I am the clerk for these proceedings.
And I'll skip to Mike.
Yeah, I'm Mike Smith, Licensing Officer.
Then back to Mario. Do you want to just say who you are and why you're here?
Hi all, I'm Mario from ICT Support and I'm here to assist with any ICT technical issues in the meeting.
David?
Hi, I'm David Tewett. I'm on behalf of the Licensing Service.
So I saw that Councillor David is here as well, and I assume you're here to observe. Is that right?
Yes.
Welcome. And then we have Mr. Assad, who is the applicant, or here for the applicant.
Hello, yes, hi. Amr Assad, Director at Buckley Gray Young Architects, applicant.
Wonderful. And Mr. Spiegler, is that right?
That's right, thank you, Chair. Jack Spiegler, solicitor from Thomas & Thomas Partners for the applicant.
Well, welcome everyone to this virtual subcommittee hearing. So the next item, item 5 is the licensing subcommittee hearing procedure. And if you have your the report pack in front of you, you should find that on, I suspect it's an unnumbered page, is it?
It should be numbered, Chair, but if not, it's the first 2 pages after the agenda front sheet showing the items.
Okay, so the meeting procedure is on page 1, which is some way through the pack. But in any case, as you all have seen from the agenda, we only have one application that we're dealing with today, and that is in respect of Buckley Gray Yeoman, 6 Redchurch Street. And in order to kick things off, we will hear from the licensing officer. I missed the... Yes, the licensing officer will outline the report.
Yes. Okay, thank you, Chair. So this is a new application, as described in report on page 43 of the agenda pack. The premises are located in the Shoreditch Special Policy Area. Apart from the agenda pack, 2 further submissions have been submitted by the applicant. They have been circulated to all parties. We have representations from licensing and an informative from planning. There's nothing more to add to that, Chair. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. And in which case, if the applicant could present their case in support of the application, assume Mr. Spiegler, but if you could limit yourself to 5 minutes, that would be fantastic.
Thank you, Chair. I'm grateful to your officers for distributing those additional documents, being the presentation pack and my written submissions. I'm also grateful to the committee for reading those in advance. So I won't go through those line by line, but do ask you to refer to them, and in doing so, I hope to keep within the 5-minute limit. The applicant is a firm of local architects, and the application premises will be their new office with ancillary meeting rooms and a home for the applicant's new private arts club. As you will see from proposed condition 9 on page 48, and bearing in mind your previous comments, Jay, if you need me to read anything out that I'm referring to, please just let me know. But that condition requires licensable activities only to be provided ancillary to the office use of the premises during your core hours and to a very limited group of persons associated with the applicant. There will be no scope whatsoever for general members of the public to visit the premises for licensable activities. There is also no proposal for off-sales, live music or recorded music. And at paragraph 5 of my written submissions, you will see an indicative list of the type of occasions where licensable activities may be provided. At this point, I would like to ask Mr. Assad to tell you a little more about the applicant's proposals and the Arts Club. Mr. Assad, could you please address the committee?
Evening. By way of introduction, my name is Amr Assad, and I'm Director of Buckley Gray Yeoman Architects. Buckley Gray Yeoman were established in Shoreditch in 1997. We've been located in the T building since it opened in 2004 and now occupy space on the 4th floor of the building. We have circa 100 staff, including architects, interior and graphic designers. We are in the top AJ 100 practices and are very involved in all of the London architecture scene. Every year we take part in London Design Festival, London Festival of Architecture, Clerkenwell Design Week, etc. When our landlord, Derwent London, offered us the chance to take space on the ground floor of the T building, we jumped at the opportunity because we believe it offers us two things. Firstly, an extension of our office, meeting rooms, conference facilities and workspace. But secondly, it provided a forum to establish an arts-focused members club. The club will be only open to our staff, guests, clients and consultants. It will be arts-focused and provide access to the work facilities mentioned before, but it will also provide space to meet and enjoy the events which we will host, which are very much in keeping with the things that we've already been participated in. Thank you.
Thank you. Moving to the application, conditions were agreed with your Environmental Health Authority and the police, and for reference, the additional police conditions are number 20 and 21 at page 49 of your report. There are no representations from local residents, which I hope assists. The sole objection is from the licensing authority, and I understand that is maintained primarily because the premises is located in the Shoreditch Special Policy Area. On policy, in paragraph 8 of my submission, I have set out a number of reasons that I invite you to consider in determining that the premises will not add to cumulative impact in Shoreditch, and therefore the application can and should be granted under your policy. I won't take up your time repeating those submissions, or my submissions on the COVID-19 pandemic, save to say that the very specific and tightly conditioned use of being an architectural practice with no licensable activities provided to general members of the public will not add to cumulative impact and is not the type of premises your policy correctly targets. Instead, the applicant's proposals will contribute positively to the vibrancy of Shoreditch, and by granting the application, the applicant asks the licensing subcommittee to show support for an existing local business hoping to play its part in the responsible revival of the Shoreditch economy. Chair, unless you have any questions, that concludes our submission. Thank you.
So there were a number of issues that certainly came to mind for me when I was reading the application. You say that the use of the venue is ancillary to certain activities, and those are reflected in where they're reflected in the proposed license conditions.
It's condition 9 on page
48.
Give me 48. Thank you, Chair.
So it talks about the sorts of people who can be on the premises and to whom licensable activities will be provided. That's not necessarily, well, there's no capacity condition on this, is there?
No, there's not been one proposed, and we've not been asked for one so far. So,
and Mr. Assad, I think you said that there are 100 plus staff at the practice. Is that right?
That's
yes.
Okay.
And if I may direct you to my submissions, Chair, I appreciate we're flipping between documents. At paragraph 6 of my submissions, I outlined a number of people working in the building, but also the absolute maximum that could possibly attend for an event, for example, although it's not anticipated that upper limit would be frequently reached, if at all.
You say 80 architects and support staff?
Correct. So about 100, I think, Mr. Assad, is the correct figure at any one time.
Yeah, it's correct. But I think it's worth stressing that we will, of course, be retaining the fourth floor. So the fourth floor continues to be our office. This is ancillary to that.
Yeah.
Ah, okay. I see. So, but the licensable activities aren't in themselves directly ancillary to any other activity. They're, but only, if you like, indirectly through the sorts of things that people can be doing, or they can be.
Yeah, I think the important thing that everyone was trying to achieve and ensure was that the building would not suddenly become used as a private members club or a bar or a restaurant. It will and always will be an office. The ancillary activities we've talked about, some of which I would say are ancillary. It might be a few colleagues meeting in the bar for a beer after work, talking about work, having a meeting about work could be ancillary. Equally, the applicant hosting an architectural seminar with a drinks reception could be argued in our respectful submission to be ancillary to that office use.
Okay, I think unless Councillor Smith has any further clarificatory questions.
I'm happy, Chair, for the moment until we get to the discussion phase. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. In which case, we move to the responsible authorities, and the only responsible authority that has made a representation is the licensing authority, represented by Mr. Tuitt.
Thank you very much, Chair. So the representation is within the papers. I'm just wondering if the page numbers that I'm referring to are correct. So I'm referring to the full agenda pack.
Yep.
Which shows the representation. Oh, I've lost it now. Page 96, or page 82, should I say. So effectively the representation, as Mr. Spiegler has mentioned, is on the grounds of the special policy area. So this is an area which is identified as suffering from cumulative impacts negatively. And LP10 sets out the council's special policy in that area. I should just say in relation to this application, we do have a number of premises that are licensed workplaces, if you like. So that Amazon's headquarters are in Shoreditch. We have a couple of legal practices that have licensed their workspaces. I think the difference in this particular application is that members club element and the arts club element, which is why I felt that's what needs that discussion at subcommittee. So I'll just leave that there for a moment.
Thank you. Had you had any discussion with the applicant before this meeting?
Yes, I had. So Mr. Spiegler and I have discussed this application. So we did talk about that, and he did supply the additional submission also.
And had you discussed capacity?
I think we talked about capacity insofar as the number of desk space, etc., but we didn't talk about a fixed capacity in terms of the overall numbers or occupancy of the building, anything like that, no.
Okay. Councillor Smith, did you have any further questions?
Are we in the discussion phase now?
We not quite, but we can move to the discussion phase now if you don't have any questions of clarification to it.
No, I'm pretty happy. I'm content in that regard.
Okay, well, let's move to the discussion phase, which is earmarked to last for 15 minutes. It may last longer, but Councillor Smith.
Yep. Obviously, the Arts Club is concerned. The private membership aspect is a little bit of a concern for us. So we just need to know. You mentioned 4 guests per member, and you can't become a member for 48 hours before, which means that people just couldn't roll up and become a member and get in. Ultimately, I suppose the question is, how many members do you expect to get? How many members do you have? I know it's a new operation. Because obviously if you had 100 members, that would be 400 potential people. You say the maximum capacity of the venue is between 200 and 250. Just to explain also how the Arts Club is going to work. Ancillary is one word, but having an arts club with exhibitions and things is another whole kind of arena. I just want to see how kind of seriously you are about kind of the arts club dimension and as to how much you're going to be using that really. And also just to talk about your external space, because I know you're going to close that off at 10 o'clock, I believe. I just want to know what kind of external space there is there. So that's a few different little questions. I hope that's okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Before handing you over to Mr. Assad to talk about the members club, the outside space at condition 12 was a model condition, bearing in mind the new policy in respect of external areas after 10 p.m, which I include in the operating schedule, which I perhaps shouldn't because it's confusing. There is no external space. Mr. Assad, would you be able to tell the committee a little bit more about the club, please? Thank you.
Yeah, I think taking your questions in turn, the first question I think related to number of guests or number of members we envisage having. At this stage, it's hard to tell. Like you say, it would be a new venture. We envisage inviting up to 400 people to be members of the club. We'll have to see what the take-up of that is initially. In terms of the culture and how we would curate the space, like I mentioned in my initial speech, it's very much part of our culture. You know, we are a creative firm. We are based in Shoreditch. We're part of the kind of Shoreditch scene, we'd like to believe. And so the events would be rolling events. We would have various work. A lot of it will obviously be our work and, you know, our kind of work that's relating to other fellow consultants, fellow friends, fellow sort of agencies who would work on a rolling time frame whereby every week or month there'll be new pieces to be displayed, which, you know, can be enjoyed by our members. We are also part of several societies, several sort of festivals and things, which again would like to use the opportunity for our space to host such events. Often now, when required, would hire out space or, you know, hold exhibitions within the T building, but in various other parts of the T building, and this gives us the opportunity to hold it within our own space. In terms of what the members get, they would be met with two things really. On the one hand, they'd have the opportunity to use the office space, the meeting rooms and conference rooms as part of their membership. So they get the membership and they have access to those facilities during the working hours. In the evenings, they'll have the opportunity to enjoy the arts club. And like I say, I don't expect there, unfortunately, to be, you know, there's going to be hundreds of people by any means. You know, in truth, there'll probably be our staff at most evenings, but that's how we envisage it.
May I also just add that we're keen to distance ourselves from perhaps the traditional private members clubs that you may have in mind, because that's certainly not the intention. Firstly, if you look at the hours aren't associated with late night private members club. They're your core hours only. there is also no regulated entertainment, so there's no prospects of having, late night loud music. And if it assists you, if you want to try, I guess, future-proof this license, we'd be open to discussing perhaps tightening up the members club condition to more closely link it to the architectural practice arts club. Thank you.
So I certainly think that is something that we'll probably need to explore, because although you say that the intention is not that this becomes a private members club, a normal private members club, that's clearly the licensing authority's concern, and actually looking at clause 9.
Assad might have to message me quickly if I speak out of line. The joy of these new remote hearings. Condition 9C could perhaps be amended, or an alternative condition introduced, to say members of the Buckley Gray Yeoman Architectural Practice Arts Private Members Club. That would more closely tie it into the architectural practice, and also mean that this license could not be transferred to another operator in the future without a variation application being made to vary that condition. But if there's anything else you or your legal advisors have in mind, we'd be very much open to discussion.
So I'm not sure, does that actually do it, because the A, B and C are alternatives, aren't they?
That's correct, but it's my understanding that A and B aren't a concern. It's C that is the concern. So if you could tighten up, effectively make it personal to this firm of architects, that with all the other controls in respect of hours, no regulated entertainment, office planning use, we would hope gives you enough reassurance in that regard.
So, Councillor Smith, what do you think about
that? Can I just ask a question about the drinking up time? I know we're sort of moving off the issue a bit, but I think it's important to look at that as well, because it's a 24-hour working venue for office workers. What's to stop? Because there's no kind of drinking up time, obviously, on this license. What is there to stop somebody buying a whole lot of booze and staying there until 3 or 4 in the morning and then just rolling out at that time?
Thank you, Councillor. It would, of course, be in your power to impose a condition along the lines that the consumption of alcohol on the premises shall cease 30 minutes after the permitted time for the sale of alcohol. And
you would be open to that condition, would you?
I better just check my my phone. Okay, we'd be open. Just if you just bear with me 1 second, please, Councillor. Yes, that would be fine. If you were sufficiently concerned, then that could be imposed as a condition that the consumption of alcohol ceases 30 minutes after the authorised times for the sale of alcohol.
Okay.
So you mentioned whether we're concerned, and this is in the middle of the SPA and the special policy area does exist for a very good reason, because there is a very significant concentration of licensed premises in this area, and it has been subject to the cumulative impact of those premises and a lot of, on occasion, antisocial behaviour, and particularly at the weekends. So I think there's an echo here. Anyway. So I think we are concerned, and that does go some way, I think, to allaying our concerns. But I just do want to go back to condition 9. The linking it to this club is also a good step, initial or preliminary step. Amanda, presumably we can draft something to give effect to that in respect of condition 9C.
We should be able to, but I'm only concerned about what licensing may have to say about that, whether or not this is something, because generally we try not to have conditions that are personal to the actual premises because of potential enforcement issues. So I probably want to hear what Mr. Tuitt has to say about it before we consider actually drafting something.
Mr. Speaker, could you just read that condition out again, please?
Yes, thank you. And that's an excellent point raised by your legal advisor. I think, advantage of the proposal I've suggested is that it doesn't make the premises license personal. It only makes the licensable activities provided under 9C personal to that specific private members club, because that is the element, the very specific element, as I understand it, that you have concerns with. So, Mr. Tuitt, condition 9C, if you have it in front of you, my suggestion, but again open to discuss, would be it reads members of, and now new words inserted, the Buckley Gray Yeoman Architectural Practice Private Arts Club, and then it continues to read as drafted in the report.
Did you hear that, Mr. Tuitt?
I did, yeah. I mean, I guess I'm assuming the applicant's going to be there for some time.
That I might, if you need some reassurance on that, I might refer you to Mr. Assad.
Yeah.
Well, like I mentioned, the firm, we've been around since 1997. We've been in the T building itself since 2004. We like to hope that we'll be here for a very long time, yes.
Can I just ask through the chair, is the premises leasehold or freehold? Is it owned by the actual consultancy or the architects, or is it a lease?
It's a lease.
So what's that? 99 years or something? Yeah.
It's a rolling 5-year lease.
5-year lease. Okay. Mr. Tuitt, on that.
I guess. I guess maybe we could, if we are to agree that maybe just the reference to the architectural practice and the arts club, I think, would be sufficient. Maybe not necessarily the applicant as it within the condition. I think the architectural practice and the reference to the arts club should be sufficient.
Okay, Councillor Smith, you want to comment, but I just want to continue on this point for slightly longer. Mr. Speaker, what would happen in that instance if, say, the firm were to move on, or indeed the firm were to stay there, but allow someone else to use the premises under their auspices? Would that be permissible under the licence condition that you're discussing there?
under my proposal, if the applicant moved on, a incoming tenant could apply to transfer the licence. The police would have an opportunity to object to that application. The incoming tenant, if the licence was transferred, under my proposal, would still be able to provide licensable activities under 9A and 9B, which are employees, guests, private functions arranged by the applicant. But under 9C, they would only be allowed to provide licensable activities under Mr. Tewitt's suggestion if they were an architectural practice, or under my suggestion, only if they wouldn't be able to provide them full stop because they wouldn't be Buckley Gray Yeoman.
So it's say the firm were not to move on, but they were still to be the leaseholder of the premises. Could they allow others to use the premises for arts events?
It would be possible for them technically, albeit very unusual, and I certainly wouldn't advise them to do this, to delegate authority for another company to provide licensable activities under the license. But I wouldn't advise them to do that, because that is a very risky arrangement to have in place, because ultimately they're not in complete control of the licensable activities on the ground, and I don't think it's an arrangement that your officers would approve of, Chair, either.
So I'm just trying to tease out whether or not there are enforceability issues with this condition. Mr. Tewitt, are you on that, dimension of things? Is that a concern that you might have, that albeit the premises are still run in name by the architect's firm, that the others could running things?
Yeah, that's the concern. I think it should be enough of a safeguard if the occupant is an architectural practice and that activity is ancillary to an architectural practice. I think that's enough. If there was to be a new occupant and their business isn't architecture, then that would potentially require some sort of variation, which means we could look at what it is that particular business wants to carry on. So I think, which is why I don't think we need to name Buckley, Gray and Yeoman in that particular condition.
Okay. Councillor Smith, I think you have something.
Yeah, I know we've discussed this sort of the Arts Club before, and I asked you to kind of just elaborate a little bit on that. My issue, I suppose, is what is the function of calling it an arts club when it could be an architects club, for example? There's an emphasis here on the arts. It's quite loose. It's quite open. I'd just like to dig a little bit further as to you mentioned you're going to have different exhibits coming in at different times. Is it truly an arts focus there, or is it just there to kind of just entertain? What's the score?
Well, we as a practice, we are obviously architects, but within our practice, we also have interior designers, we have graphic designers, we have a whole raft of creatives who work and contribute to what we do. So when we say arts club, we say that very much to capture what we do on a daily basis, what we work with. We are one of our projects, for example, we're about to complete an art gallery in Kensington, we're about to complete another art gallery in Clerkenwell. We are very much part of a creative agency that we circle in the kind of creative field, and we have lots of our collaborators are in the arts, be it in fine art, let's say, or photography, or any of the other sort of fields. Those sort of collaborators are ones who we would like to invite to display their work within our space. But like I say, we ourselves often exhibit work. 2 years ago, we exhibited within the Tea Building an exhibition of photography, which was our own commissioned photography. So it crosses over. It's not necessarily architecture, as you can see, but it is something which, it crosses along various kind of aspects of creative arts.
And is the art going to be for sale?
No, sorry. It's just it's a it's a display piece, something which people can come and enjoy, and it's not for sale at all.
So really, this is it's a social space, really, which allows other kind of photographers, artists, graphic designers to come and
Correct.
show people what they can do ultimately.
Correct.
Yeah, great. Thank you.
Through the chair, could I just ask for clarification that these events that are being proposed, what times do they finish? Or are they proposing to finish?
So insofar as they would be licensable, and some of these events will not be licensable, they would finish in line with the proposed times for licensable activities. Slightly out of order, can I just pick up on what Mr. Tuitt said last night? I completely agree with everything he said, and I was thinking, if I was approached by a potential new operator or new tenant moving into this building, I would certainly advise them, you cannot provide a private members club under that license unless you're an architectural practice and it's an arts club, and you need to get that condition varied, if that assists you, Chair.
It does. But I do want to actually focus for a short while on conditions 9A and 9B and what they would potentially do. But before doing so, I think I'd like to say that, Mr. Assad, I'm sure your architectural practice is a wonderful local corporate citizen, but I think that any concerns we have aren't about your practice as such. We just need to have some reassurance that these premises will be run in line with the, so as not to undermine the licensing objectives, so as not to contribute to the antisocial behaviour that you see in Shoreditch, and that indeed, if you were to move on, that any successor would continue to run these premises in a way that is responsible and doesn't contribute to social issues in the area. And in light of that, I think I continue to have a concern about the fact that there isn't a capacity restriction on these premises. Is there a fire safety assessment as to how many people can safely fit in these premises?
Yes, there is. We've worked alongside an approved inspector to look at how many we can fit in, and by means of it is quite detailed, but we can change it. If the doors are formed in such a way as to be outward opening, which we will do as a separate application, then the number of people that can fit in are circa 200.
So that's a very large number of people to have in the middle of a special policy area like this one. Mr. Tuitt, do you have any views on that?
I guess the number is significant, but I think is it in the application that could be up to 80 office workers anyway? Is that right?
100 or so, right?
That's right. So it could incorporate that. There's also a dispersal policy requirement, but I'd also ask you, Chair, to consider the purpose of visit. If this was your typical private members club or a bar or a nightclub, I would completely understand and agree with your concerns about potentially 200 people leaving late at night. But this is not one of those premises. This is something very different. It's not a place where you've got 200 just general members of the public visiting for live or recorded music, loud music late at night and dispersing out to the street with no connection to the premises. These are an entirely different category of persons who will be closely linked to the premises, part of the local community, and not the type of persons that would cause the type of problems that you're familiar with in the Shoreditch special policy area, particularly with the dispersal policy in place.
So that's reassuring, but as things stand, 9A and 9B don't contain that sort of restriction.
Well, 9A But forgive me, Chair, could you please clarify your concern on
Yeah.
B?
So say another firm were to move into these premises and they were a nightclub owner, for example. They would they could serve alcoholic drinks to their employees and as many guests of those employees as they chose, and as many people that they could fit in there, provided that they had bought a ticket beforehand. Isn't that would be possible, wouldn't it?
Thank you. I understand that a lot clearer now. Thank you. It would be possible. You heard from Mr. Tuitt, though, earlier that a number of these type of licences, sort of, shall we call them the 9A and B type of licences, have been granted in the London Borough of Hackney. And so far as I'm aware, they're not the type of premises causing concerns in your borough. If that is a concern of yours, then we've discussed some wording which Mr. Tuitt has suggested, which the applicant would agree with in respect of condition 9C. If you were sufficiently concerned about 9A and B, then you could incorporate that or similar wording there too, to prevent the nightclub operator scenario moving in as their office.
So, sorry, a drafting solution, I'll come to you in a second, Mr. Chair. Drafting solution might be to move that wording from 9C up to the first line of 9, so it applies to A, B and C. But before you answer that, I'll ask Mr. Tuitt to come in and respond to what you said.
Yeah, I think that's fine, Chair, because there are other safeguards in relation to major changes to the premises. So if someone wanted to, for example, change it into a nightclub, the hours are not very good for a nightclub, or just they're not really relevant to a nightclub, or they don't suit a nightclub style operation. And also the plan attached to the application, that a significant amount of variation would be needed for that, or even a new license application. So that and planning permission as well. So there's certainly safeguards around that.
Okay, so by the sounds of things, we're happy with the restriction just applying to 9C. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right.
Okay. Councillor Smith, do you have anything further that you wanted to ask?
No, I think I'm relatively content, but I'm like you, also slightly concerned about the capacity issue. I'm just wondering, if we could just get some reassurance on that, and would the client be willing to put a condition there at all, to even consider it?
On capacity?
Yeah.
If it assists you, the applicant would be prepared to agree a capacity limit to restrict the number of persons on the premises for licensable activities, insofar as it related to licensable activities, because there is other things going on in this building that aren't licensable, to 200.
Okay. Mr. Tuitt.
I'm content with that. It seems fine to me. It's sensible.
So this is still the discussion phase of the hearing, and what I've got so far is that there are sort of 3 amendments that we've largely agreed. One is about drinking on the premises, or licensable activities on the premises are to cease 30 minutes after. Hold on, 30 minutes after what? 30 minutes. Can someone assist me?
After midnight.
Before closing of the premises.
No, it's after
consumption,
the licenses until midnight.
30 minutes after.
Yeah. It would be that the consumption of alcohol should cease no later than 30 minutes after the permitted time for the sale of alcohol.
Yeah.
Something
Okay.
like that.
The second change was that restriction to 9C that I think will Amanda and Mr. Spear, you can probably hash out the exact wording of afterwards along with Mr. Tuitt, and then a capacity restriction of 200 Was that sums up what we've discussed and agreed? Is that right? Yeah. So, can we? I think we should probably move on quickly to the summing up, or the final comments, as it's called. Mr. Stewart, did you have anything that you wanted to add?
Nothing majorly to add. It just occurred to me we do have within the policy a desire to seek to diversify the offer. So I guess you could say that this sort of premises is quite different from what is there at the moment. It does diversify the offer to some extent. However, it is obviously within the special policy area, which is why we had to have that discussion today.
Okay.
The only thing,
Amanda,
the only thing I wanted to just clarify is I don't know if we've heard enough about the cumulative impact and how they will not add to that.
Mr. Spiegler, if you've got some closing remarks, and if you could address that point, then I think we would be grateful.
Thank you. In my attempts to keep within the 5-minute time limit, I didn't go through line by line policy submissions, which you have at paragraph 11 of my submission, which sets out a number of reasons why we think that this application can and should be determined as not adding to cumulative impact in the Shoreditch special policy area. And it ties in with the closing remarks of Mr. Tuitt that the special policy, we say, is quite correctly aimed at preventing the proliferation of late night entertainment-led nightclubs, bars and other alcohol-led premises. This premises, the application premises, is definitely not one of those premises. It doesn't fall into those category of premises, and through this hearing, for which I'm grateful to, we have established a very tight set of conditions which controls that use and would absolutely prevent it from becoming the type of premises that your policy is so concerned about. So I would say the policy is not aimed at restricting local architectural businesses from diversifying and enhancing their offer and hoping to play a valuable part in the revival of the economy in Shoreditch. Unless you've got any further questions, I might hand over to Mr. Simon to see if there's anything else he would like to add.
So did you say you're handing over to Mr. Assad?
I think that's it. I'll take his silence. He doesn't have anything else to say.
Yeah, okay. Yes, true. Nothing else.
Thank you. But just in respect to that, I won't read through them, but there are a number of points in my written submissions that I ask you to consider on cumulative impact and policy.
Which we have read and I'm very grateful for. Councillor Smith, do you have any other questions that you anything else you wanted to clarify?
No, I'm happy, Chair, if you're happy with the condition of 200, if you think that that's reasonable. Licensing seems to think that's reasonable. I don't know if we want to explore lower numbers or just keep it at 200, just being open about it all.
So, the licensing authority seems content, so I'm not minded to explore that any further.
Okay, thank you. That's it then.
Chair,
hello? Amanda?
sorry, I'd just like to ask if you could ask Mr. Tuitt to clarify when he does his closing submissions, whether or not he is satisfied with the cumulative impact reasons given by the applicant.
So I think Mr. Tuitt has already given his closing remark.
I'm happy to respond to Amanda's question. Yes, I feel that what's being offered, what's been applied for, is quite different from what is in the area already. As I mentioned when we began, there is that members club element to it, which is slightly different from other licensed workplaces that we have. But I think with those additional conditions and what's already in the application, I think that should mitigate any negative impacts on the Shoreditch Special Policy Area.
Thank you.
Okay. So you'll see from the committee hearing procedure that usually we will now go away and consider. In this instance, I suspect that we don't need to. Is that right, Councillor Smith?
Yep, agreed.
Okay, so we would be very happy to agree this license with, or to grant this license with the conditions that we've discussed today, which Amanda and Mr. Spiegler can draft up. So you should receive a final, a written version of the decision setting out those additional conditions in short order. And I'd just like to say, as Mr. Tuitt said, that this is precisely the sort of business that and project that we should be promoting in the borough, and we'd wish you all the luck, the best of luck with your move down the building and your development of this as a arts venue.
Thank you very much. Much appreciated.
Thank you very much, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Smith.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. Bye.
If there's no other business, Chair, we'll conclude the meeting.
Yeah, happy to do so. Thank you, everyone.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Bye.
Could you just hang on for a while?
Who's hanging on, sorry?
If Amanda could hang on with me for just a moment. Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks. Thank you, Chair.